So I want to paint a little bit of a picture and say, if we took some of the principles that I'm sure you guys use in your co-op, in your community, and you have this awareness, you know who everybody is, like your leaders, they're available, they're connected, they don't spend most of the year in some other part of the country. You know, you're available and they're available to you, and sort of take that picture and say, what would it be like if we could make our country work more like that? If we could be more connected, if people were more plugged in to what's happening, and they could kind of come together and they could say, hey, this is something that we're all noticing is happening to all of us, and we need to do something about it, as I'm sure happens every time you guys have a co-op meeting. So yeah, but I do want to thank Dave for setting this all up, and I want to touch briefly on the CHF. The proposal, the brief that they've put before the House right now, let me say that's just fantastic. The leadership in saying that we're not going to just ask for more money. We're going to say, look into the information, do the research, figure out how this impacts people, and then once we know what happens, we'll know what we have to do. And I think that's just excellent. That's something that we're really in line with at the Pirate Party. And I just want to tell you guys a little bit about the Pirate Party. We're trying to provide some information leadership to Canada. We think that we're kind of stepping into the information age, you know, with technology, with a lot of these things. A lot of things are changing, and it's kind of like, you know, the arrival of the printing press. It made it so people could read books and spread information around, and it changes things a little bit. And we want to provide some leadership there, and we're calling that information leadership. So information leadership is basically looking at the ways that we exchange information, what we do with it, and rethinking things from that perspective. So when we look at government, we see that the information of government is not very accessible to people. It's hard to figure out what's really going on inside. And conversely, there's not a way for the information from people to get into government. I mean, the political process it's kind of cumbersome. It's kind of complicated. A comment that I've made. If our political system were a computer, it would be like an old clunky computer, and you're trying to figure out what buttons you press to get anything done, and then you press, and then you wait for 2 hours while it starts up, and then you get a screen and it crashes, and you're in trouble, you start all over again. That's basically what our political process is like. And we want to rethink that. You know, we think if you were approaching our political system with a fresh new perspective, you do some things a little bit differently. And I believe that we can do that. That's the perspective that the parties apply that in how we think about like laws to do with technology, like devices that use information, whether they create information or whether they're exchanging it, whether they're sharing it around. We want to reapproach all of that and say, how can we do this more effectively, and how can we take businesses and people and our culture, our country as a whole, and lead them all together into the information future. Not have one surging ahead and leaving the other behind. You know, we don't want to just focus on a particular business and leave everybody else struck, but we also don't want to just focus on everybody else and have our economy collapse. It's something that we kind of have to do together, and that's kind of the leadership that we're looking to provide. So in Winnipeg, this is my first candidacy, and I'm in fact the first federal candidate for the Pirate Party. We've just launched here. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of taking a look at the situation and saying, you know, we need to get people more connected in to democracy. What if people felt when an election came up? What if the average person on the street felt, this is my chance to shape the country? That's not what we feel. I mean, I don't think that's what I feel. I don't think that's what most people feel when an election comes up. Most people, first of all, they groan, right? Oh, great, another election, right? I mean, we just had the civic election. We're going to do this again, and if the predictors are right, we'll probably have another election in the spring, you know. But so if we were to take a little bit of the politics out of politics, and if we had a chance to make people really able to really decide what happens in our country, so that as a country, as a community, like as a community in Winnipeg North and as a country in Canada, we could come together and say, all right, you know, all of this political bickering, this immaturity that's infiltrated our political system, that is worse than a playground, really. It's not behavior that would be tolerated on a children's playground at school. If we could put that aside, and if we could get down to the real work of democracy, identifying our serious problems, our serious issues to solve, the things that affect us, and figuring out what to do about them. And if we could focus on that, it's valuable to have different perspectives. I don't think that we should wipe away all the great diversity that we get from our political system. But that diversity needs to be focused on the actual issues. It doesn't need to be focused on whose girlfriend did such and such, or who had a certain paper, or who got a certain endorsement from a certain person. Or this is, if you were designing a system, that's the garbage. That's the stuff that needs to end up in your spam filter. Sorry. That's all right. I mean, it's almost funny. It's so sad. It's almost funny. So.